and welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager, and I get to be your host today. Today, we are sponsored by our good friend, Myrna Lindstrom. Myrna, we thank you so much. You've been so generous in sponsoring these, and we do appreciate that. We will take questions today, as always, the last 15 minutes of the program. So if you would, please put them in the Q&A. If they're in the chat, I may not see them, but we do love your comments. So keep those comments coming in the chat. But if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A and we'll try to get to it at the end. Today, we have Walter Turpening. Walt grew up in Southeastern Michigan, and he has a degree in physics, geology, and geophysics. In 1972, he began to work in the oil and gas exploration, doing geophysics research, development, and technology support. He took a woodworking class from a Pittsburgh furniture making. I think he and his wife were living both in Texas and Pennsylvania. So he took a class, and it started everything. And then eventually they moved to Kingsport, Tennessee, where Walt set up a small shop and became a chair maker full-time. In 1998, Walter experienced his first national show at the Handweavers Guild of America Convergence when it was here in Atlanta. We're so excited we launched his career. Then one year, he was vacationing in Southern Appalachia, and he saw shaker and rush woven chairs, and it sent him off on another direction. He began teaching himself how to weave these seats with commercial braided cord, and with his lovely wife, Ellen, teaching him weave patterns and color blending. In 2003, Walt tried hand dyeing commercial cord and later taught himself how to braid cord. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in a minute. So welcome, Walt. It's good to have you here.
Good afternoon.
There he is. Yay.
Glad to be here.
We're going to start off with the big question, which is, what is your favorite tea?
I've been pondering that. I was going to say Cajun medium dark roast coffee, but it needs to be tea, so it's Lapsang. But it's Lapsang Souchong actually is my favorite tea.
Wow, where do you get that?
Oh, Twinings makes it.
Really?
Yep.
I have to try that out.
Yeah, it's kind of smoked.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so it's kind of a neat smoky flavor, and it's got a great aroma. And so yeah, it's kind of strong, and I kind of like strong tea and whatever. So
I have to check that out.
Yeah.
Well, can you talk some about, I've talked some about in your introduction about how you got started, but can you expand on how you went from being the scientist to a fiber artist?
Actually, Ellen encouraged me to get a hobby because my original hobby was working on cars, and we were living in Pittsburgh, and it was the house and the shop or the garage wasn't conducive to continue that hobby. And so I took a couple of woodworking classes from Frank Flynn, who was a woodworker, furniture maker there, teacher. And so I took those classes, and I started doing what I call sculpting mathematical functions in 3D. But that's because my career had been in 3D seismology for oil and gas exploration. So that was the crux of how I got the woodworking started. And then we moved back to from Pittsburgh back to Houston. In the oil industry, you always have some part of your career in Houston. Mm. It's a sort of, and we then also say that if you work in the oil industry and you spend some time in Houston, you don't have to go to purgatory when you die because you've already been there. But no, but anyway.
Sorry, all you Houston people.
Right. So, and then Ellen was a seamstress. That was her hobby, was sewing, but she was not finding the fabrics she wanted
Hmm.
and the colors, because they were always the colors from 3 to 4 years ago that was in the stores. So I says, why don't you make it? And so she went over to a store, a shop in Houston called Craft Industries, and took a couple of wood or weaving classes. And then in '93, she or in '83 rather, she said, well, I really like the weaving. And so then I bought her a baby wolf that she wove on then for the rest of her life. So that kind of got us into the fiber, understanding, getting, knowing it. And then, we joined Contemporary Handweavers of Houston. And I was going just because it was fun. And then, so that got kind of the fiber idea together. The real thing that got it going was I was a woodworker, so I was trying to make a comfortable leg rest or footstool for the rocking chair that I inherited from my dad. And he had a footstool for it, but it was a leather tufted footstool that basically was just a wood box that had a couple of legs on it. And if you tried to move it, it would turn over. It wouldn't slide on anything. And it really wasn't comfortable because that horsehair padding was pretty heavy, hard rather. So it was a bit of a pain. So I wanted to develop something. So I started making ones in wood, solid wood. But then I realized that the real problem was the edge of whatever surface you were using.
Oh, yeah.
And I made a couple of really nice footstools, but you always wanted to cover them with a pillow or something or other. Now, backing up a little, after Ellen got her the loom, then she needed a bench. And so I was a good husband and made a nice wood bench for her at her loom. And she used it. But she always put a pillow on it or a padding of some sort. But the problem was the edge, no matter what. And if you I made one out of walnut and cherry, and it was really pretty, but covering up that nice wood didn't work. So we then did the vacation in '92. We did the vacation to the Southern Appalachians. We toured around, from Gatlinburg to Asheville and on. We actually went on up into Berea.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Made that whole tour. And in doing that, I saw, as you mentioned, those benches. And so I started playing around with woven seating and then realized, hey, we got to do something different than try to make a flat seat.
Mm.
So the walnut cherry wood leg rest and Ellen's bench ended up being really nice tables. And in fact, if people have visited the booth and the various shows, there was a little table that I had in the booth all the time right next to the cord. That was the original leg rest that got me into making a different leg rest.
Ah, okay.
So I played with the idea, and that then got working on how to make a frame so we could weave a seat or a surface that was inherently comfortable. And I tried all sorts of different weaving materials, but that didn't make it. And then I got the cord, went into the cord stuff. So that's the realm, and getting it into making a weaving bench. Ellen's study group would visit our house every once in a while. The group would get together as part of the Houston Guild. And one of the weavers sat on that footstool or leg rest.
Uh-huh.
And as I was walking through the room, she said, "Walt, can you make one of these for my loom?"
Really? That's how it started?
That was the seed. And sadly, if you're out there and you remember doing that, please tell me, because I've forgotten your name.
And where was this? Was this while you were in Tennessee?
No, this is when we were in Houston.
Houston.
Still in Houston. Yep.
Okay, Houston, we're looking for someone. Pay attention.
Yeah. Or in Texas, people in
Oh,
Houston.
yeah, Texas. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So anybody who's into contemporary handweavers of Texas or contemporary handweavers of Houston. So, but anyway, that's the thread that got us going.
Well, you talk some about, at the beginning there, you talk some about how your previous career impacted on your fiber career. Can you say more about that? I mean, were some of the theories you learned or the work practices, did that apply to weaving?
Well, it is not so much into the weaving itself. It was more into the understanding that I needed to make a shape, a three-dimensional shape, instead of a flat surface that normal benches are. I knew I had to, and so having dealt with and been able to think in 3 dimensions, which was what my job was when I was doing geophysics. That was my job. I mean, that's what you do in exploration. You do seismology, and then you try to get the geology out of the seismology. And so that was my career. And so, but then to get into actually making, the business is because I just got tired of being in management of an oil and gas business. And so just got out of there. And so, but anyway, it's that understanding. And in being a physicist, then I understood light and color. And so things started playing off of that.
Yeah, I'm always amazed how many of our guests are both scientists and artists. They usually have some kind of a science, math, science background, and then they go into art. So it's so common. It's such a relationship.
Well, a lot of times when you're doing theoretical work, you end up finding that the theory has some sense of beauty. And it is an art form for many mathematicians and theoretical scientists. It's an art form. So,
well, what was it like going from changing hats? You're going from being a scientist to an artist. Was that odd for you to give that up? And because one thing I read about you, which I loved, you said, "I am not retiring because when people retire, they get sick." So you haven't found something else, right?
Well, yeah. I saw so many guys or people who would leave the oil industry, and then you'd hear, 5, 6 years later, they died. And many of them, I knew that they retired with nothing in plan.
Oh.
They didn't have any plans. They were just going to figure it out on the fly, and that didn't work. So having the hobby and doing that and actually making, technically, my very, very first show was with the Contemporary Handweavers of Texas conference. I can't remember it was 1997, and it was in College Station. Is when I started showing the benches, the woven benches. And then, the move to Kingsport, there's a whole other story about that, but moving to Kingsport made a clean cut from the oil and gas geophysics, so I could set up and not have to worry about that. If we had stayed in Houston, people would have been bugging me to do geophysics.
Oh, right. Okay.
By being in Kingsport, there's no oil and gas companies here. And so I was able to focus. And so the plan was Convergence of 98 when we moved here. And we moved here in June. That conference was the end of July. And I had to make 10 or 11 benches in that short a period of time. So I'd have
No
something
pressure.
in the booth.
No pressure. Well,
Right.
let's show some of your images because
Sure.
your work is just beautiful.
Thank
So I
you.
want to show these two images, and this is again referring to your lovely wife, Ellen. And there's a story about the white bench compared to the colored rocking chair. Would you share that with us?
The commercial cord I found,
Mhm.
went down to my hardware store and found commercial cord when I was unhappy with trying to do traditional weaving of a seat, or I had a tough time finding traditional seat weaving materials. Now it's
Mhm.
probably in Houston, but I never knew. I was part of the Woodworkers Guild also, but anyway, that seat, the picture of the one on the left, that's white commercial cotton cord. It's 100% cotton. And I had advanced that. I started off doing simple straight twill diamond patterns. And then I realized I could do more complex twills like that one. That's an advancing point twill. In fact, it's sitting in the studio right now, but that's made out of mahogany and maple
Mhm.
with that seat on it. And then after doing that from 98, well, from 94 through through 2003, basically it was all white, and I was just working hard at making it look interesting. But people were ordering. I mean, the Convergence, I ended up with 3 months of orders and haven't had less than that since.
Yeah, it's true.
So, and then Ellen said, you need to add color, because she that was her passion, was color weaving. And so she really, was pushing it, and hand dyeing. I could only hand dye 200 yards of the cotton cord. Keep in mind that 100 yards of cotton cord weighs about a pound. And doing 200 or 2 pounds of cotton cord on a turkey fryer in the backyard took all. A bench typically can use about 300 yards. So I'd have to do 2 batches. And so that meant and so it was a real pain. But I did some, I did try some. There were a couple of pieces out there that have some color in them, but it wasn't much. And so Ellen pushed me. She said, you got to get into color. And so then I had to figure out another way, because dyeing was not going to do it. And you can't get a lot of the commercial cord is not, if you get color, it ends up being nylon or something else. And I wanted cotton. So that's when I started delving into a into thinking about making the cord. A Robin Goss was a rug weaver in upstate New York, and she was asking for a rolling seat bench for her 12-foot rug loom. And I was talking with her and I asked her what she was doing. Well, she actually did flat braided wool, or braided wool into flat braids on a braiding machine, and then used that as the warp and weft to make rugs for interior designers. I don't know what she's doing. I tried to get a hold of her and can't find her. Her website's blank now. But anyway, she told me to go to Pawtucket Mill Supply, which is now defunct. And I actually bought a round, what they call a round braider, a 16 carrier round braider. And then when I got it, I snatched yarn from Ellen's stash and played on how to make an 1/8 of inch cord. The white cord I turned out that I like to use was 8-inch diameter. And so that was the fun stuff. And this Arizona rocking chair is kind of the extreme of making color.
Oh, it's amazing. It's wonderful. Now, we actually have an image of the machine. I'm jumping ahead here, so apologize. Poor Mandy. I run her ragged. But we have an image of the machine, and you answered one of my questions, which was, how do you find a machine like that? That's amazing that you were able to find it. And
well, the neat thing is, almost all of the textile mills in the country, because they have yarn, have braiders. Now they have all sorts of different braiders, various types, and rope braiders are, have been around since the early 1800s. This design here, this is from New England Butt Company out of Connecticut. They, or Rhode Island, the patents on this particular braiding machine is 1845 to 1895. But there's examples of braiding machines back in the 1700s made out of wood. And they were making rope and lines for ships.
so how wide, now this is a narrow braid. Is this the size you use on the benches and everything, or is there a wider?
Yeah, that cord that you see on the upper part that is being braided,
right,
actually is 1/8 of an inch in diameter.
And that's what you use on everything?
On everything. I also, for a while, had a flat braider, but now Brandy Clements, a seat weaver over in Asheville, has it. And she and her husband are using it for new designs in seat weaving. But this braiding machine has 16 carriers on it, and they're paired up, so they operate as if it's an 8 bobbin braid. And in Kumihimo, it's called an 8 bobbin hollow braid with core. And the little white thread you see in the lower left-hand corner coming off the green measuring system is 8/4 carpet warp. On the braider, the carriers, they're paired up. So one of the bobbins of the pair has 2 threads on it. One has a single thread. The orange or the gold you see on that one is single. This is braiding what is called oatmeal in our terms, which is UKI's polo tan, 20 threads of that, and 4 threads of now discontinued antique gold. I got a bunch of it that I bought when I heard they were going to discontinue it. So there are 24 threads being braided here. around the 8/4 carpet warp. And when it's running full tilt, it is making about 70 to 80 yards an hour out in the shop, clattering away.
Well, this is just amazing. It's funny because I was talking with Brandy and she told me that she was getting her braid from you. Do you sell to other people? Because I'm sure this isn't readily available anywhere, right?
Yeah, well, except for her making the flat cord, I'm about the only one, I think, that actually makes cotton. This is be particular here, making cotton
Right.
braided cord in color. That's
Right.
the critical part. But anyway, the reason I did this is because the commercial people, there was one fellow, a company in Mount Airy, North Carolina, by the name of Tim Calloway. He had a rope mill, and he made all sorts of rope. A lot of his rope was in your hardware store, but it was always white or tan. And initially, I was buying spools of it from, from supplies or from refinery supply houses in Houston, and but then we moved here, and that made it more difficult. Couldn't do that, so you got to make it. If you can't buy it, you got to make it. And so we started playing around with those colors, and Ellen helping out all the time. So
well, let's go back to color because I want to look at some more of your beautiful work. For most people, there are some people who have just a natural understanding of color. They know what works well together, that kind of thing. And then there's some of us that have to learn it. So was there a learning curve for you of trying to figure out what goes together, what doesn't go together?
There was a little, but living here in Tennessee, and here in Northeast Tennessee, we got all sorts of color in all times of the year, in the flowers and whatever. And Ellen was passionate about color, so Ellen taught me a lot. Anytime I had a question, I'd come to her and I say, I got a customer asking for these two colors to be blended together. And it really, she'd say, I think you need to talk to them. So
Save
I
them
would
from themselves.
Right. And so what I do is I braid up a couple of yards or a few yards of what they requested, ship it off to them, and they say, oh yeah. And in fact, the classic one is that she wanted to blend lavender and a light purple, and wanted to use it as when you made the cord, you couldn't tell that there was two colors. And so then she said, oh, okay, then use navy and silver.
That's a jump.
And it turned out to be wonderful.
Oh, good.
It ended up looking like faded denim jeans.
Oh.
So the blending and everything else is now become second nature for me. That particular bench has 5 different colors in it and blended. Starts with the Kelly green, goes through a kind of a plum green to the Nassau blue to a purple into the dark purple in the middle. And by just changing gorgeous. The ratios of the colors in the cord. With 24 threads, you got lots of ratios to play with.
Yeah. Well, it's incredibly beautiful. That's one thing. But the other thing about your work that kind of separates you from the masses is that the whole ergonomic aspect of it. Now, this bench, and we've talked about it for those who don't know, this is the sliding bench so that you don't lean, right, while you're weaving. You can slide your whole body and kind of keep your your torso pretty straight. So your work is so well known for that. And we're going to show an image of the diagram.
Okay.
But if you can talk some about how did you come up with this? I mean, it's almost like another degree you need to have to figure out the sizes that were needed. How'd you come up with that?
Actually observing people.
Really?
And having, my mother was 5 foot tall, and so she always needed tiny furniture to be comfortable. She never liked sitting on a chair with her feet dangling in the air, or all sorts of options, or sitting on a sofa and having to slide back and put her feet on it. So I knew that size relative to the furniture was important. And the class, I tell the story in the workshop. I call it my Barb and Betty story. One of my two technicians who worked with me in the oil industry, Barb and Betty. Betty was about 5'4", and Barb was 6 foot tall.
Wow.
But her inseam was 36 inches. And when they sat on a bench down in the break room, they were the same height. Barb's upper torso and Betty's upper torso were the same height. All of Barb's height was in her legs, or a lot of it. And so, dear friends, both of them are still friends. But Barb always brought 4 2x4s so she could raise her desk. Wherever she went to work, she took 4 pieces of 2x4 so she could raise her desk up that 1.5 inches so she could be comfortable working at her desk. I did similar things so I could work at computer terminals. So I knew that we needed to get positioned in a chair to work at a desk properly. I mean, X chair is now making millions doing X chair. But so that, knowing those ergonomic issues with people trying to work, I came up with, we wanted to get, when that customer, or that weaver that asked me to make a bench for her at her loom, we worked out that we needed to know her lower leg length and the treadle height to get a seat height so that she didn't strain her back. And that's what she was complaining about.
Uh-huh.
So when you have people complaining about problems, then you start looking at their dimensions and the dimensions of whatever. Spinning wheels and looms essentially raise the floor anywhere from 1.5 inches to 8 or 9 inches, depending upon the loom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you have back hinge treadles on your loom and a big, draw loom or whatever, the treadles are 7, 8 inches off the floor. So you now, on a typical, say a baby wolf or other jack looms, the treadle height is about 3.5 inches.
Yeah, I'm looking at mine now. It's like, oh, I never thought about that.
What loom do you have?
I have a Leclerc.
Yeah, and the treadle height on that is about 3.5, 4 inches where your foot rests.
Right.
Now the beam on your loom, if it's a baby wolf, Ellen she had the wolf pack. She had all 3 of the wolves, and but those baby wolf, mighty wolf, and wolf pup, the breast beam is 30 inches. Treadle height's 3.5. So then we make the seat, for most typical people, we make the seat 20 to 21 inches high, because your lower leg length is something on the order of 17 to 18 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the elbow height became a bigger issue after I just started off with that lower leg and treadle information. But we moved, and the issue for other weavers in the Houston Guild said, wait a minute, my shoulders are getting tired. And we realized that they had to raise their shoulders to get their arms over the breast beam to go work on their loom. So we started combining that information, breast beam, subtract your elbow height from it, get you a seat height, lower leg length, treadle height, get you another seat height. Then you choose the higher of the two so that your knee is below your hips, at least, and your elbow clears the breast beam.
Well, this next image we have, again, we get to look at your work. And this is 3 different chairs. The first one is a musician rocker. The second one is that sliding bench that, you know, for a wide loom that we all want so badly. And then a knitting rocker. And so this is like a good example of whatever your activity is, you have to have a different kind of seat. And you've worked that out, right?
Yeah. The musician's rocker and the knitter's rocker, those two, are basically the same design concept. But you're just sitting, and well, and just so you don't need to consider a treadle, like for a spinning, like for a spinner or a weaver. So you're just, it's a chair. And I've made dining room chair sets for people. And you do that. But the musician's rocker generally is wider because they want to move around. Generally, they buy them as practice chairs.
Oh, okay.
And my mother was a knitter, and she had her 2 favorite knitters rockers, which were small folding rockers that fit her. So that's the concept I have here for the knitter's rocker, is that it fits you with your feet on the floor without having.
Why do you think so little attention was ever paid to the ergonomics until recently? Like, there's other people on websites now and they've written books about it and tapes and stuff, but when you started this, I'm very few people were talking about the ergonomics of. Why do you think that got ignored so much?
Well, the people who made looms were woodworkers, essentially.
Oh.
So they knew how to make flat planks and whatever. And so they knew they had to make different heights because their looms may be different heights, but also there were different height. People were different heights. So you can adjust the seat, a couple of 3 or 4 inches. The problem was the flat plank, and people have been trying to.
Oh, right.
Right. They've been trying to make that seat soft or whatever using who knows what to get a comfortable surface. And so the seat on a loom, or all of the rocking chairs, or any of the chairs now of my designs, are inherently comfortable because the seat flexes and fits your bottom. And that sliding seat bench there with the back on it is for someone who needs to pause periodically and rest or lean back and take a look at their work or whatever. And the fun part is, from this elevation, or the evolution of the sliding seat bench, has gotten to the point now where everyone, and I'll credit Kathy Chung out of the DC area. She used to run the company Just Our Yarns. She requested a sliding seat bench, but she wanted to be able to take the seat off the bench, the slider, and use it at her baby wolf, and use it on the seat, on the rails, for her Magato.
Smart.
So Kathy Chung is the one who gets that credit.
Way to go, Kathy.
Right.
Well, you teach a lot, or you used to. I know you're teaching
do,
this
yeah.
spring. But what is it about teaching that feeds you? What's the passion for you about teaching?
The joy on people's faces when they're done.
Yeah.
They go home and they have a bench that they have been able to weave and learn that process. And you were asking, about whether or not I sell cord. We sell cord. We do, but it's always sold to people who have taken the class.
Oh, okay.
And what we will do, my apprentices and I, we will make a frame. They say they get a new loom and it's bigger.
Yep.
So we make the frame and we ship them the frame and we make the cord that they want and off it goes. And so that's the joy of having people. There's what I call aha moments where they will, be sitting there. And in fact, a fun one, the 2014 Convergence, we taught the workshop as a pre-conference workshop. And one of the joys, the 8 people who were in the class were all a joy, and one of them was Robin Spady. Right? She knows twill. She knows weaving.
She does.
She was really happy and everything else, and she was weaving away, and then she'd ask me, what's happened. I tell this story, and she knows I tell this story. And she was falling behind the others. She was just having one heck of a time trying to get the pattern to work out. And then about halfway through the second day, where she struggled, she was then, yes, Robin, yeah, I see you down there. You're being outed here. Yes, you are. What happened was she was sitting there and we were all, everybody was working away, doing and everything else. And all of a sudden it was, aha! And, he says, I had the scale all wrong. I'm weaving 1/4 of the twill pattern I thought we were. But then she had a real joy when people would finish their bench. She would then play, I'm so happy from Despicable Me. And so she'd play that on her. And everybody do the dance. And,
there you go. Well, I'll tell you, I was at Southeast Fiber Forum up in Airmont, and you were teaching. And I remember it was the envy of the whole conference. Everybody who walked by was like, I gotta have one of these. I should have taken this class and especially at the end when people were sitting in them, we were all like, this is amazing. So I understand what you're saying about the look on people's faces when they finish, because we saw it at that conference.
Yeah, that was an interesting conference. Yep. The sad part is we can't really handle much more than 8 people.
Right.
So, and now here in Kingsport at Exchange Place is where we teach. And it's turned out to be a really joy, because the Exchange Place is an 1850s farm, historically correct farm. And so people enjoy coming in the spring and fall. And so having them come, Exchange Place is extremely happy with it all. They like seeing people come from all over the country. And
yeah, you got a class in April, right?
Yep. And it's full. Sorry, folks.
Oh, I waited too long. Rat.
Well, there's one coming up in October.
There we go. Ooh, and that'd be pretty that time of year.
Yep. So,
Well, let's talk a little bit about your book. We're running out of time and I want to make sure we talk about your book. I have a
okay.
copy of it. I'm never giving it away. It is absolutely gorgeous.
Well, thank you.
You've used beautiful images in it. But what I'm always curious why people write a book. There's 1,000 reasons. What is your reason for writing a book?
I initially was going to write a book back in 2012, 10 years ago, and realized it was just too hard for an individual to try to write something. And I knew nothing about it. And Deborah saved me on that. But the reason I wanted to, initially, the book was going to be essentially an about, sort of a history and an evolution of the design and etc. But then our editor at Stackpole said that they wanted it to have more information about how we did everything, not just about it. And so they initially said they wanted a how to make ergonomic woven seating. And Debbie and I both disagreed with them because a how-to book isn't a how-to. Videos work best. Or actually what really works best is doing it. So the book is written to be kind of a guide for doing it, but you're not going to learn it from the book. You're going to learn it by doing it. The woodworkers have to do the woodworking. The weaving has to be learned because it is a feel thing.
Mm.
If you, in the introduction, I tell in the workshops, I tell the story of the Duke and the wheelwright, but where he tells the Duke that, the written word is dirt of the guys who died. So here, what I wanted to do is at least capture the evolution of the design, the whole design concept. I mean, there's other, people who've done wonderful things with their woodworking designs, etc. I can name, there's a long list. And they're wonderful and they're inspirational. And so I'm hoping that this is an inspiration for somebody to kind of pick up and take and evolve it further down the road.
Yeah, just to put a plug in here, the Handweavers Guild of America's magazine, Shuttle Spindle and Die Pot, is reviewing your book in this issue that's coming out, which was kind of serendipity because we booked you a long time ago and I'd had no idea then that your book was going to be reviewed. So if you're interested and can't quite decide if you want to buy the book, which you will, trust me, the review will be in the magazine, so you can go check that out.
Okay.
And
for Amy Stevens, who says videos don't necessarily always work, she's right, but they're better than a book.
yes. Sometimes you got to do what you got, right?
Yeah, right. Go ahead.
What's next for you? I want to get to questions, but I do want to ask, what's next for you?
Mary Scott, the one who owns that rainbow chair on the cover of the book, she said, when are you going to do books 1 and 2 that fills out all of the stuff about the frames?
Oh,
and all the different weaving that you do, because you didn't cover all of it in the book. And so there's a lot of stuff that's not in the book. So we'll work at it. My apprentices have been taking photographs for the last year and a half of all the different steps and learning how to make and everything else. So we're starting to work on the concept. We haven't got it all done yet. We can't say that we're writing the books, but we have that help. And so we'll work at it here and see what's going on. That's probably the next thing, but not for sure. Don't bet on it tomorrow.
But if it does happen, once again, You heard it here first.
Yep.
All right, well, let's take questions. We have some wonderful questions. I love this one. This is from Janice. I'm not going to even try to pronounce your last name, Janice. I'm sorry. She says, I believe I have one of Walt's benches, but I'm not sure. Does he sign them? I'd love to know for sure. Do you put your little logo on all your benches?
All the benches, those that I make and started way back when, on the right rear leg of a bench or a chair is a WT monogram.
It is in your book and I'm trying to find it.
Right. And now that we have Randy and Peggy are my apprentices,
Here it is.
they're, yeah. Yeah, that monogram is on the right rear leg of the benches we make. And with Randy and Peggy now making the frames and weaving some of the chairs, making the pieces,
Mhm.
there are now there's a new brand that has that WT that has 2 dots above it.
Oh,
So
okay.
it says now it's my basic design, but it's being made now by a group of us, the 3 of us.
Okay.
And on that, if you have a bench that was woven in a workshop, that brand is on the left rear leg and rotated 90 degrees to say that we made the frame, but someone wove the seat
Oh, okay.
in a workshop setting. Or if they had been in the workshop, they then have that on their new one. So,
Well, that's good to know.
little quirk.
Well, you got a shout out here. It's kind of long, but I want to say this into it anyway. It's not a question, but a comment. And this is from Beverly. I don't know who this is, though. I have cane woven furniture for 50 years. And about 20 years ago, I had the inspiration to twist strips of fabric, often upholstery fabric, to weave instead of rush or cord. She also used strips with interface to stiffen and did shaker-like weaving. I was juried into the Kentucky craft with benches and chairs repurposed or bought wholesale. But she said, your benches are so beautiful and much more professional than mine were, Beverly. But thank you for saying that.
Well, thank you, Beverly.
Your work is amazing. Ramona wants to know, on the Arizona rocking chair, how did you get the bend in the uprights at the corner of the seat? You have a rod, right? And you go around it?
How do I get the bend?
Yeah. Doesn't it bend down a little bit on the sides?
No, it doesn't. What happens is, okay, the design to get a curved seat, which
Right.
happens to be a saddle.
Right.
The sides are higher than the front and back, so that you create
Oh, okay.
a saddle shape that is low front and back and high on the sides. And that's the curve. And the warp is wrapped around the side rails, and then the weaving is wrapped around the front and back rails in the weaving process. And that's in the book.
Okay.
Chapter
I'm trying real
6.
quick to find that image. So get the book, Ramona.
Yeah. Chapter 5 and 6.
Let's see what else. Oh, somebody wants you to go to Canada and do a workshop. Do you travel anymore? Or are you basically just staying?
No, I'm done doing that. Now,
Sorry, Karen.
one of the students from a couple of years ago who lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, she came all the way from Vancouver to take the class. And I said, if you make the frames, I'll sell you the cord. And so contact me and I'll get you in touch with her.
We got another plug here for your materials. Ruth Howe is saying that at the Southeast Fiber Forum that we mentioned earlier, this spring, your cord is going to be there, right? Brandy's going to be teaching there and she's going to use your materials, right?
If yeah, that'll be there. That's one of the options. And
Now,
also
was
it'll
she
be
an
the lang.
apprentice of yours?
Huh?
Did she teach, did she learn from you?
Well, she took one, she learned how to do it.
Uh-huh.
Brandy is the creme de the creme, or I don't say it. She's one of the best seat weaving people in the country. Her and
Wow.
Dave in their shop in Asheville, the Silver River Center for Chair Caning. I mean, they do museum pieces, restore museum pieces. She's the fourth generation of chair seat weavers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she's teaching, and she'll be making probably flat cord for people to use if they want. But the lanyard cord we're making here.
Okay. All right.
So anyway.
All right. Robin has a comment.
Okay, Robin.
Hello, Walt. I own a 16-strand maypole braider made by the Butt Company. It currently operates with a hand crank, but I would like to motorize it. I'm also interested in acquiring different gears to braid different size cords. Or is there any company you would recommend that I could follow up with to acquire the necessary parts?
Yes, there are two companies.
Oh, good.
Contact me through the website. I will get you in touch with those companies.
Now, Robin, wasn't that worth being outed?
Well, what's important there, check the right-hand side of the braider and see if it's got a V belt or a flat belt. That's the drive mechanism. The crank is up on the top, and that's just the reposition bobbins when you're loading it. And I don't recommend using it as a machine to make cord, but with just a crank. But contact me some more, Robin. I'll get in touch. We'll talk.
Well, Janice, who asked whether or not she has one a year, she's like, oh my gosh, I have an original Walter Turpening. So, thank you for letting her know that. She's so excited. Way to go,
Well,
Janice.
Have her get a hold of me and send me a picture of it, and I probably can tell you who the original one was.
All right. Did you get that,
Because
Janice?
most of them are pretty unique.
All right. Oh, Robin said absolutely. She'll get with you.
Okay.
Now, you may have just answered this. She says, does the book have information on how to build the wood frames?
Yes.
It does?
Both a weaving bench and a spinner's chair. Chapter 5.
Okay. I just looked at the pictures. It's pretty. So it sounds like PJ, you're going to take off and make benches. She said her husband's going to do the woodworking, her husband and her son.
Okay.
Teresa wants to know, do you still find that you have to do some dyeing, or can you get what you need commercially? Good question.
UKI is the yarn that I use.
Okay.
And the reason is it's how their unmercerized yarn is spun. So in general, they have been pretty good at keeping the colors available. I have used Tencel.
Really?
But it makes a totally different diameter cord because Tencel is a different density than cotton. But I have used Tencel. There's some out there. And in fact, Kathy Chung's sliding seat bench has a flat cord Tencel.
Of course it would be. Of course it would be Tencel. So someone was asking, what is the size of the UKI? I think you said earlier, but she missed it.
It's the 8.2 unmercerized.
Oh, 8.2. Okay.
Right. Yarn Barn
Oh,
of
that was
Kansas.
Ramona.
Okay.
Okay.
Yarn Barn of Kansas sells it, and Halcyon sells it.
Okay.
Halcyon calls it Homestead 8.2.
Okay.
And I think Yarn Barn calls it their A cotton or something like that.
Marcy Petrini. Hi, Marcy.
Hi, Marcy.
Says, hello. It's not a question, but a testimonial. She says, Terry's rocking chair in our dining room chairs are going strong. She would have that.
Yep.
Well, I cannot believe it. We still have some questions left, but we have to stop for the day. I'm so sorry.
Uh-oh.
Thank you so much for being here today. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm humbled by everything that people have been saying, and the questions and whatever. I've been just
Speaking the truth. Speaking the truth. Well, I'll tell you, you thought you were busy before. You're going to be even busier now, because if people didn't know about your benches and seats and stools, they're gonna want one now. And let me tell you, all you have to do is sit in one and you're in heaven. So so I want to thank Walter, and I encourage you to go to his website, wtbenchesstoolschairs.com. You can see a lot of information there and learn about his workshops. The spring one is full, but there's October. If you're interested in taking what better place to be in October than, in the mountains of Tennessee. So we be sure you check that out. We appreciate that. And thank you to Myrna Lindstrom. Myrna, you did a good job today. This has been a great Textiles and Tea. So thank you, Myrna, for sponsoring us. We do appreciate that. If you would like to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, your business, your guild, if you want to honor someone, please go to our website at weavespindye.org, and you can get information there about how to be a sponsor, or you can just contact the office and we'll be glad to help you with that. Just a reminder that we're still doing the virtual jurors talks. There's one this Thursday. Speaking of Robin Spady is going to be talking Thursday, and she's going to be talking about vistas along the Appalachian Trail yardage show. This was the yardage show that was at Convergence this past summer in Tennessee. It's like 6 degrees of separation today. We've got Walther here, Tennessee, Robin. And if you want to go, it's at 1 o'clock on Thursday. You can sign up online. There's a discount for members. But you can get more information about how to attend that virtual jurors talk. And it's amazing to hear the juror talks about these pieces. It's wonderful. We want to thank everybody for supporting HGA through your donations to the Fiber Trust or your membership. And just a reminder, these donations are the things that support and make the programs happen, like Textiles and Tea or Career in Textiles or Spinning and Weaving Week. Those things happen because of your donations, and we do appreciate it. If you would like to see those going, please support us through Fiber Trust or your membership. If you've missed any episodes, people ask me this all the time, you can watch it on the HGA Facebook page, or you can watch it on YouTube, either one. Keep an eye. I would encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube, because when you do, then you'll get a notice that a new program has been uploaded. It takes a while for us to get them up and running, but we get them there eventually. So if you want to watch it, share it with a friend. Probably want to watch this one again. You can do that again, Facebook or YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Thank you, Walter. It was wonderful having you here. Next week, we have Omar Chavez Santiago. We're excited to talk about his work. I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Happy tea.